Hasselblad camera has always carried a special reputation in the world of photography. For decades, the name has been synonymous with craftsmanship, image quality, and a certain Scandinavian elegance that appeals to those who want more than just a camera. They want an experience. So, when the Hasselblad X2D II camera, often just called the X2D II, was announced, expectations naturally ran high. After spending a few months putting this camera and the new 35 to 100mm zoom lens through real-world use, I wanted to share my experience, warts and all. This isn't a glossy press release or a carefully staged marketing pitch. Instead, think of it as a frank and practical look at what the X2D II camera really delivers, where it falls short, and who should consider investing in it. First impressions are droid from Star Wars. Let's start with the name. The X2D II camera doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. In fact, it sounds more like a Star Wars droid than a medium-format digital camera. Still, naming aside, Hasselblad camera has clearly designed this to be a successor to the much-loved X2D camera, a camera I've personally used for a couple of years. Right out of the box, the new body looks refined and feels premium, though with a few quirks that I'll get into later. The addition of the 35 to 100mm zoom lens alongside the body makes for a very versatile kit, one that theoretically replaces several prime lenses without compromising on quality. But before we dive into the glass, let's break down the major upgrades and features of the X2D II camera. Continuous autofocus, finally worth talking about. One of the headline features is the new continuous autofocus system, branded as AFC. In previous generations, autofocus was often considered the Achilles heel of medium-format cameras. It was usable but hardly confidence-inspiring when compared to modern full-frame systems. The X2D II camera changes that. During my tests, whether photographing people, pets, or even a squirrel darting around the backyard, I found the continuous autofocus to be surprisingly capable. Eye tracking worked consistently well, and the viewfinder displayed clear tracking overlays in real time. This is not just a minor tweak. It's a genuine leap forward from the X2D camera, and for anyone who shoots moving subjects, be it portraits, street photography, or even certain wildlife scenarios, this improvement alone makes the new model worth serious consideration. The HDR revolution, a new way of seeing. When Hasselblad camera first mentioned HDR capabilities, I dismissed it as a gimmick. My mind immediately jumped to the overprocessed HDR images popular in the early 2000s and natural blends of multiple exposures that often made scenes look cartoonish. But the HDR in the X2D II camera isn't that at all. Instead, this feature takes advantage of modern HDR displays, televisions, laptops, tablets, and even phones that can show brighter highlights, deeper blacks, and more overall contrast. The result is an image that feels more lifelike and immersive, closer to how our eyes actually perceive a scene. Hasselblad camera has built a true end-to-end HDR workflow into the camera. It captures HDR files, displays them on its own HDR-capable EVF and rear screen, and allows editing through the Focus Mobile 2 app. In theory, this means your images never leave the HDR world, from capture to editing to viewing. The problem? Focus Mobile 2 is currently only available on Apple devices, which rules out Android users entirely. And even if you are on Apple, editing 100-megapixel files on a small mobile screen feels impractical. I personally prefer working on a proper monitor, and I found the desktop Focus software clunky compared to my usual editing tools. That said, the potential here is undeniable. The first time you see a true HDR image displayed properly, you'll understand what the fuss is about. Hasselblad camera deserves credit for pushing this forward, even if the ecosystem around it isn't quite ready for prime time. The tilt screen, the small but welcome upgrade. Another practical improvement is the two-way tilting touchscreen. If you've ever tried to compose a shot with the camera low to the ground, you know how awkward it can be without an articulating screen. The new design makes it much easier to shoot from creative angles without breaking your back. It's not revolutionary, and the older X2D camera's screen wasn't terrible either. But once you've used the new mechanism, it's hard to go back. These small quality-of-life upgrades often matter more in daily use than big headline specs. Image stabilization, mixed results in paper. The X2D II camera boasts a 10-stop, 5-axis image stabilization system. That sounds almost miraculous. Imagine handheld multi-second exposures with tack-sharp results. Some early testers online reported exposures as long as 3 seconds handheld that still looked crisp. In my own tests, the reality was more modest. I managed about 0.6 seconds consistently, which is still an improvement over the X2D camera but nowhere near the dreamy 3-second claims. Could it be a pre-production model, outdated firmware, or just my technique? Possibly. My hands are steady, and I've been shooting professionally for years, so I'm inclined to believe the production model may perform better. Even so, the stabilization is useful and certainly helps in low light or handheld situations. Just don't expect miracles. Storage and build quality. The tale of two stories with its predecessor. The X2D II camera comes with a built-in 1TB SSD. This is a fantastic feature, especially given the massive file sizes generated by a 100-megapixel sensor. Of course, you can still use CAF Type B cards if you prefer removable storage, but having that internal drive offers peace of mind and convenience. The body itself looks sleek and modern, but I have one major gripe: the grip material. Hasselblad camera opted for a plasticky, rubberized texture that feels practical and provides excellent traction, but it doesn't look premium. To me, it resembles the Fox leather wraps used on cheap 1980s guitar amps, which would peel and wear over time. Functionally, it's brilliant. Aesthetically, it feels like a misstep for a camera that costs over $7,000. Controls and usability. The joy of a joystick. The X2D II camera introduces a new joystick and a couple of customizable buttons. These may not sound like big upgrades, but they make a real difference in practice. For example, when reviewing images through the VF, I can now use the joystick to quickly move around the zoomed-in frame and check focus. On the older model, I had to poke the screen with my finger, often bumping my nose into it awkward, especially when teaching workshops. The joystick feels intuitive, responsive, and long overdue. Should you upgrade from the X2D? This is the million-dollar, or in this case, $7,000 question. If you already own the X2D camera and primarily shoot landscapes, I don't think the X2D II camera offers enough to justify the upgrade. The improvements, while real, are incremental: better autofocus, HDR, stabilization tweaks, and a tilting screen. Nice to have, yes, but not game-changing for a static subject like a mountain range or a coastline. Camera manufacturers love these incremental updates. It keeps the product line moving forward, but rarely in a way that forces you to upgrade. Personally, I prefer to skip a generation or two and then make the leap when the improvements accumulate into something truly transformative. On the other hand, if you're new to medium format or coming from another system, the X2D II camera is an outstanding entry point. It's versatile enough for landscapes, portraits, travel, and more, while still delivering that signature medium format look in almost three-dimensional rendering that smaller sensors struggle to replicate. 8. Pricing oddities. The new is cheaper than the old. Curious observation. At the time of writing, the new X2D II camera is listed at $7,400, while the older X2D is selling for even more on some sites like the NH. How does that make sense? My guess is availability. The older model may still be in stock, while the newer one is likely back-ordered, creating strange price dynamics. Either way, it's unusual to see the previous generation cost more than the successor. The missing feature, video recording. Here's my biggest disappointment: still no video recording. For years, I've asked Hasselblad camera to add this. The sensor is phenomenal, the lenses are gorgeous, and the body is more than capable. Why not let us hit record and capture stunning 4K footage? I understand the purist argument. Hasselblad camera is a photographer's brand, built for stills, not video. But why not offer an optional firmware update? That way, those who want video can unlock it, perhaps even as a paid upgrade, while the purists never see the feature. For travel and landscape shooters especially, the ability to record video without carrying a second camera would be invaluable. Imagine climbing a mountain with a heavy kit only to realize you can't capture video of the breathtaking view. It feels like a missed opportunity. The 35-100mm lens for true workhorse. No, let's talk glass. The new 35-100mm zoom immediately caught my attention because it pairs perfectly with the existing 20-35mm wide-angle lens. Together, these two cover most needs for a landscape photographer while minimizing the weight and hassle of carrying multiple primes. In use, the lens is superbly sharp across its range. More importantly, I was curious to see how it compared to Hasselblad camera's prime lenses in terms of background blur and rendering. Shooting at 80mm f4, I compared it directly with the 80mm prime at the same settings. The results were almost indistinguishable. The zoom produced a creamy, pleasing bokeh that came surprisingly close to the prime's signature look. This makes the 35 to 100mm an extremely compelling option. It may not fully replace the primes for every scenario, but for travel and general work, it delivers convenience without sacrificing much, if any, image quality. Final verdict is the X2D II. The Hasselblad X2D II camera is a beautiful, powerful, and highly capable camera. It produces spectacular images, offers meaningful upgrades in autofocus and usability, and pairs wonderfully with the new 35 to 100mm zoom lens. However, it's not for everyone. If you already own the X2D camera and mostly shoot static subjects like landscapes, the improvements don't justify the upgrade. The changes are nice, but incremental. You'd be better off waiting for a future generation with more dramatic advances. If you're new to medium format, on the other hand, this camera is hard to beat. It's versatile enough for portraits, travel, and landscapes, and it provides a user experience that balances modern convenience with Hasselblad camera's classic aesthetic. My only real grumbles are the plasticky grip, the underwhelming focus software, and the ongoing refusal to add video. Beyond that, it's a joy to use and a reminder of why Hasselblad cameras still hold such a special place in the photographic world.